Guild Wars 2 is like a time capsule you forgot you buried. There I was doing my dishes when suddenly it hit me. Didn't the new expansion just drop for Guild Wars 2? So I went to reset my password because of course I forgot about it and saw that the last email from ArenaNet was dated 2017. It's been more than 8 years since I last stepped into the world of Tyria, and a lot has changed. But strangely, I didn't need a tutorial. It all just kinda clicked. Like hearing an old song you forgot you loved and the memories just flooded back to me. But nostalgia is one hell of a drug, so let's take off those rose-tinted goggles and answer the question that actually matters. Is Guild Wars 2 worth playing in 2026? Let's talk about this game's character creation. Look, if you're coming from Black Desert Online or Dragon's Dogma 2, you kinda need to manage your expectations here. This system was built in 2012, which means we aren't exactly dealing with thigh physics or individual nostril dilation here. You pick a race, you pick a preset, and you pretend the lighting in the creation menu represents what the game actually looks like. That said, the racial variety is still some of the best in the genre. You've got the Char, which are giant industrial war cats that run on all fours and whose players think they're badass but really they're just goofy looking kittens. Then you have the Asura, these gremlin scientists who judge everyone else's intelligence while standing at knee height.
Look at this dude.
There's the Sylvari, who are essentially sentient salads with British accents. We have the Norn, who are just humans that drink more milk.
Pretty princess!
And of course, the humans for people who think vanilla ice cream is a bit too spicy. Hey, that's me! So you've spent 3 hours perfecting your basic look and you've locked in a name that wasn't taken by a player in 2013, and now you're dropped into the world. Now, in the spirit of science, I decided not to boost my character to level 80 immediately because I wanted to see if the new player experience in 2026 actually holds up. But interestingly, the first thing I noticed was the texture crunch. To be real here, the starter zones in Guild Wars 2 are, well, vintage to say the least. Some of these textures are so low res I thought my glasses were still on my desk. But then the music kicks in, and not just any music. We're talking about the early tracks composed by Jeremy Soule, the very same guy who did the Skyrim soundtrack. And suddenly the low-res grass doesn't really matter because you are exploring a painting. And that is the core strength of Guild Wars 2 leveling. It is completely free form. You find a point of interest, well, you get XP. You view a vista, you get some more XP. You revive a dead player, here, have some XP. The game literally bribes you to be a good person and to explore the map. It's really just brilliant game design. Instead of quests, we have dynamic events. 1 minute you're picking apples and the next you're blocking strikes from a military commander or defending a bridge from centaurs. It throws you right into the action. Well, most of the time. Because one thing this game has in excess of is escort missions. And well, the less I say about this, the better. I swear, these NPCs walk at a speed specifically calculated to raise my blood pressure. Move, you stupid bitch! Anyway, aside from the slow walkers and the, well, let's call them artistic cutscenes where two characters stand on a painted background and talk at each other, the leveling flow is genuinely relaxing. However, I am a veteran, and like any true veteran, my patience for relaxing runs out at around level 25. So I did what every altholic does, I ate that level 80 boost like a champ. And once you hit that level cap or boost your way there, you fully unlock the heart of, well, any game. The combat. Now this is where Guild Wars 2 still flexes on almost every other MMO in the market. It's this weird, beautiful hybrid between tab targeting and action combat. It's fluid, it's responsive, and dodging a massive attack at the last second still triggers that dopamine hit that my monkey brain craves. And you will need to master that combat because the moment you step out of the core game and into the expansions, the difficulty curve stops being a curve and turns into a big ass wall. Especially when you hit Heart of Thorns, the first expansion. Now, I have mastered Elden Ring, I have beaten Sekiro, I enjoy pain, but nothing, and I mean nothing, prepares you for the absolute disrespect of a Heart of Thorns hero point. 1 minute you're a godslayer in the starter zones, and the next you're getting absolutely folded by a fucking mushroom. These hero points are stupid hard, they are overtuned, aggressive, and frankly unfair. But I kinda love it. It forces you to actually learn your class and work with other people. You can't just face roll your keyboard anymore. You need a build that has survivability. Because you see, if there's one thing ArenaNet loves more than jumping puzzles, it is crowd control. The amount of knockdowns, stuns, and pulls in this game is absurd, especially in Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, where I spent half my time lying on my back.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not.
So how do you survive this? Simple, you bring an army. This brings us to the meta events, the absolute crown jewel of Guild Wars 2, in my humble opinion. Unlike other MMOs where group content means standing in a queue for a dungeon, here, the open world is the dungeon. You'll see a notification, look at your map, and suddenly 50 other players are converging on a single point like ants on honey. You join the Zerg, you follow the commander, and you drown the boss in a sea of particle effects. Speaking of Zergs, Guild Wars 2 has some of the best ideas for PvP on the market. Sure, you have your standard unranked versus ranked matches, but the most fun PvP I've ever had has been in world versus world. Here you can jump into 4 different maps where the objective is to control the map, and because you're essentially facing off against other servers, you get into these massive PvP battles that are so hilariously over the top that it always manages to get my blood pumping. But there is a price for the spectacle, and that price is your goddamn frame rate. Look, I am running an RTX 4090 with a 7950X 3D. This is a NASA computer, and yet when the world boss spawns and 50 players start casting spells, my PC starts gasping for air. We're talking drops to 30 or 40 frames per second. The engine is old as fuck. It relies heavily on single core CPU speed, which means it doesn't matter how expensive your graphics card is, because when the Zerg arrives, your frames will walk out the door. But you know what? When you're watching a 50-foot neon whale swim through the cyberpunk city of Kaineng, or fighting a literal force of nature with an army of strangers, you kind of forgive the lag. But why are we all here? Why are 50 people piling onto a single boss until our CPUs melt? 2 words: the gem store. Now usually when an MMO has an in-game cash shop, it's often not very player-friendly, but Guild Wars 2 has a system that is essentially the Robin Hood of microtransactions, because you see, you can convert in-game gold into premium gems.
You what?
This means every single item in the store, like the outfits, the mount skins, and so on, can be earned just by playing the game. You don't have to spend a single dime of real money if you don't want to. It's incredibly player-friendly, and it's the reason why I've forgiven this game for charging me for bag slots. That said, inflation hasn't been kind to this game's economy, and you usually have to grind hours on end just to afford a single outfit. It is very grindy, but the fact that the option even exists, well, that is a massive W for the players and for ArenaNet. The system respects your wallet as long as you don't respect your free time. But hey, if you are going to sacrifice your evenings to the grind gods, you at least want a nice view while you do it, which brings us to the Visions of Eternity expansion. And well, you can tell the budget isn't really what it used to be. The intro cinematic for when you land on Castora feels a bit, second-hand.
Really?
but the vibe is great. The tropical island aesthetic and the focus on underwater exploration is undeniably refreshing. As an example, the skimmer mount can now dive underwater and it swims much faster than most mounts on land. And the best part, you can literally dive underwater in any area where there's deep water. And yes, that includes old areas of the game. Now that's just straight up awesome.
This right here is my favorite thing.
That said, I've barely scratched the surface of the new maps and I still have no idea how most of the new class specializations actually work. I just press buttons and pretty lights happen and things die. It's pretty neat. Now, I shouldn't neglect to mention that there is a story in this game, but is it good? Well, yeah, I think so. Is it mind-blowing in terms of emotional payoff? Well, that kinda depends. Personally speaking, it's not at the levels of emotional impact of something like Final Fantasy XIV's Shadowbringers and Endwalker Run, but the Elder Dragon saga spanning the base game to End of Dragons is definitely where the meat of the story is. Now, for the sake of spoilers, I'm just not gonna say much more about the story. With all this said, is Guild Wars 2 worth getting into or return to in 2026? The short answer is absolutely. The long answer is yes, but bring your wallet. Between Heart of Thorns, Path of Fire, End of Dragons, Secrets of the Obscure, Janther Wells, and now Visions of Eternity, you are looking at about $135 fat to get everything. However, you are paying for a game that respects your time. There is no subscription fee. The gear you earned 5 years ago is still relevant today. Guild Wars 2 is like that old friend who texts you at 2 AM. Maybe they're a bit weird, maybe their engine is a bit dusty, but you hang out with them because nobody else makes you feel quite like they do. It's janky, it has beautiful systems, and it's still one of the best MMOs on the market. But that's gonna be it for today, guys. Thank you to all my wonderful Ensven Squad members and Patreon supporters for, well, supporting the channel. You guys are all awesome. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Mr. Olten, signing off.